You're watching a Highwire Media podcast. Happy New Year and welcome to the first episode of 2024 of the Big D Breakdown. As always, I'm your host, Larry Lease. Today we're diving into the latest headlines from around AT&T Stadium. Before we do that, we'd like to remind you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that bell notification button to be notified of future videos. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in, listening on whatever podcast platform you're using. With that, let's dive into today's first topic. As we begin this episode, we must address the three Cowboys that deserve the most blame for the blowout loss to the Eagles. Dallas Cowboys were looking to get on another winning streak heading to Philadelphia on Sunday. Instead, they reverted back to their old ways of mistakes and turnovers, losing 41-7 to their divisional rivals. Even with the team out of playoff contention and battling injuries, many expected a more competitive game from Dallas. Blame can always start at the top with Jerry Jones and Mike McCarthy. Sunday's loss was a massive step backward. McCarthy's future, of course, will garner full attention after next week, but for now it is all speculation. Despite questionable decisions in the Eagles game by McCarthy, few players deserve to be blamed for Dallas not being able to keep this game close. So, at number 3, we have Jake Ferguson. Sunday's game was a good representation of Jake Ferguson's season in microcosm. After a Pro Bowl season in his first year as a starter last year, many expected an even better season, no matter who the quarterback is. Ferguson has battled injuries this season, but more noticeably, turnovers. In the first quarter, Dallas actually managed to keep the game close. An early interception return for a touchdown, the offense tied the game at 7. And with Philadelphia marching down the field on a 10-play drive, the Cowboys' offense looked to have some life. Unfortunately, Jake Ferguson gave all their momentum away when he fumbled the ball just 2 plays into the drive. Turnover led to an Eagles field goal, and the game went all downhill from there. Once again, the turnover bug got Dallas, like it had earlier in the year during the losing streak. Even worse, the fumble was the second one Ferguson committed against the Eagles this season. He fumbled in the game earlier in the year in Dallas, giving him now 2 fumbles lost for the year. In total, Ferguson has fumbled the ball 4 times this season after not committing one in his first 2 seasons. Being a critical member of this offense as he has been, Ferguson has to be better at holding onto the ball. It is hard to blame just one player for one play, but when momentum swings in the NFL, it can fully go in the other direction. The Eagles had all the momentum from that point on, and Dallas did not score again. For once again making a huge mistake against the Eagles that gave them a surge of momentum, Ferguson deserves blame for the loss. Number 2, Andrew Booth. There's one player on that defense who looked out of sorts all game. It was Andrew Booth. With Trayvon Diggs, Kalen Carson, and Josh Butler done for the season and other injuries at corner, Booth got the start on Sunday opposite of Daron Bland. The Eagles smelled the mismatch and they took advantage all day. Just like in the first game against Philadelphia when A.J. Brown torched Carson, Devontae Smith did the same thing against Booth. Smith led the Eagles in receiving for the game with 6 catches for 120 yards. Most of them came with Booth lining up on him. On the Eagles' first offensive touchdown, Smith beat Booth off the line cleanly to haul in a 22-yard touchdown pass. The day would only get worse for him. Towards the end of the half, with the Eagles up 17-7, they only had 36 seconds to try to get more points before halftime. That ended up being plenty of time for Kenny Pickett as he hit Smith again for a 49-yard pass that brought them down to the goal line, where they eventually punched it in to go up 24-7, effectively ending the game. Once again, Booth got burned. In the fourth quarter, Smith scored his second touchdown after running a simple slant route. Booth clearly looked lost on the play. Before he could react, Smith was off to the races. The play was the third one Booth got beat lining up on Smith. Needless to say, he'd like to forget all about this game. The Cowboys traded for Booth from Minnesota in exchange for Nashawn Wright. Wright never became a depth corner Dallas could depend on, and Booth has looked lost all season. Even with Diggs and Bland here for the foreseeable future, Dallas needs to address cornerback depth this offseason. Right now, it looks like Booth will not be retained in 2025. He deserves a good amount of blame for the blowout loss. And finally, number 1, Cooper Rush. Cooper Rush regressed Sunday afternoon after having arguably his 2 best career performances against Carolina and Tampa Bay. Rush has had to deal with the huge task this season of replacing Dak Prescott for most of the season. However, for a backup quarterback, Rush has looked capable for the bulk of the back half of the year. He struggled in his first few games this season, but took better care of the football during Dallas's wins. Sunday against the Eagles was arguably his worst game of the year. The first drive showed how this game was going to go for him. Third down near midfield, Rush was looking for Brandon Cooks on a slant route for the first down, but instead found C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Johnson ended up taking it back for a touchdown. That set the tone for the game. Rush looked like he clearly did not see him and stared down at his receiver, making it easy for Johnson to go get the ball. Later in the second quarter, Rush was trying to get something going downfield, but instead threw a ball into triple coverage, one of the worst things a quarterback can do. Gardner-Johnson ended up with his second interception. Eagles went on to score before the half, putting the blame for the touchdown on Rush. It marked the first time all season Rush had thrown multiple interceptions in a game, and his first one since the Cincinnati game. With two camps of fans who love Dak Prescott or Cooper Rush, Rush's performance on Sunday did not tip the scales in his favor. Prescott is still the undisputed starter due to his talent and new contract, but Rush has been winning over a lot of fans this season. After a game like this, it shows how much Dak means to this team. Even with Rush being the backup, most expected a better outing from him based on the last two games. For that, he deserves the most amount of blame for this loss. Now on to our next topic. Rico Dowdle makes history in the Cowboys' lopsided loss to the Eagles. Rico Dowdle has given Jerry Jones and the Cowboys front office a lot to think about heading into the offseason. Officially eliminated from playoff contention a week ago, the Dallas Cowboys entered Sunday's afternoon matchup with the Eagles, hoping to keep their longtime rivals from officially clinching the NFC East. And with America's team coming in hot after winning 4 of its last 5, and the Birds being without the services of Jalen Hurts, many thought Dallas might actually have a shot to win this game. But instead of putting up any sort of fight, the Cowboys looked like a team ready for the season to be over. They took an embarrassing 41-7 defeat, marking the first time they've been swept by the Eagles since 2011. And what an ugly sweep it was. Philly outscored Dallas 75-13 in the 2 meetings this season. Despite the lopsided outcome, there was one bright spot for the Cowboys on Sunday, that being running back Rico Dowdle, who surpassed the 100-yard mark for the 4th time in 5 games and also made some franchise history in the process. While the Cowboys as a whole had nothing to play for, Dowdle certainly did, as he needed 97 rushing yards to reach the 1,000-yard mark for the first time in his career. Accomplishing that goal by running for 104 yards on 23 carries, the 26-year-old became the first undrafted player in franchise history and only the 22nd player in NFL history to do so. The previous record for the Cowboys belonged to Troy Hambrick, who rushed for 972 yards in 2003. Dowdle naturally wasn't happy with the outcome of the game, nor was he pleased with his 3rd fumble of the season. But he was clearly thrilled to achieve this feat. The South Carolina alum has certainly given Jerry Jones and the Cowboys front office a lot to think about. He's set to become an unrestricted free agent. He played this season on a 1-year deal with $1.255 million, but will command quite a bit more during the upcoming offseason. With Zeke undoubtedly out the door, one has to wonder if Jones will be willing to bring Dowdle back. But given the Cowboys' salary cap concerns, he could very well opt to let Rico walk and take his chances in the draft. Only time will tell. While the Cowboys as a whole had nothing to play for, Rico certainly did, as he needed 97 rushing yards to reach the 1,000-yard mark for the first time in his career. And in accomplishing that goal by running for 104 yards on 23 carries, the 26-year-old became the first undrafted player in franchise history and only the 22nd player in NFL history to do so. The previous record was held by Troy Hambrick, who rushed for 972 yards in 2003. Rico naturally wasn't happy with the outcome of the game, nor was he pleased with his 3rd fumble of the season. But he was clearly thrilled to achieve this feat. The South Carolina alum has certainly given Jerry Jones and the Cowboys front office a lot to think about in recent weeks, as he's set to become an unrestricted free agent. He played this season on a one-year deal worth $1.3 million, but will command quite a bit more during the upcoming offseason. With Zeke undoubtedly out the door, one has to wonder if Jones would be willing to bring back Rico. But given the Cowboys' salary cap concerns, he could very well opt to let him walk and take his chances in the draft. Only time will tell. And with that, dive into our next topic. Cowboys fan favorite all but calls out Mike McCarthy after the Eagles' loss. There was only going to be one outcome when the Dallas Cowboys kicked off against the Eagles. While Dallas had won 4 or 5 coming in, their roster is decimated and locked horns with arguably the best roster top to bottom in the NFL. Even without Jalen Hurts, these teams didn't belong on the same field Sunday. Any hope the Cowboys had at upsetting their rival ended on the 7th play from scrimmage when C.J. Gardner-Johnson took a telegraphed Cooper Rush pass 69 yards to the house. Cowboys needed a perfect game for Rush to have a chance, and he had arguably his worst game to date in a Dallas uniform. Despite Rush's struggles, it wasn't a banner day at the office for Mike McCarthy. Some of his play calling left something to be desired. One, Cavante Turpin expressed frustration with it after the loss. Turpin was not a fan of Dallas's offensive approach without superstar CeeDee Lamb, who was shut down for the final 2 games after aggravating his shoulder injury last week. Excuse me. Turpin said, quote, "Man, I just feel like at the end of the day with CeeDee gone, we weren't really calling no pass plays. We just run the ball, throwing checkdowns. We thought we're going to go out there and show people it ain't all about CeeDee. At the end of the day, wasn't getting no down the field routes being called." Turpin makes a great point. With no Lamb, many Cowboy fans pointed at Turpin as a potential spark plug for the offense. It seemed like an obvious spot for McCarthy to manufacture torches for one of the most dynamic players the NFL has to offer. While Turpin was targeted 4 times, he caught just 1 pass for 16 yards. He added 2 carries for 18 yards. Even with a Lamb or in the lineup, one could argue that Turpin should touch the ball more than 4 times. And he only logged 4 touches without Lamb is baffling. Brandon Cooks tried his best to provide a spark, but Rush couldn't get anything going after he piloted a touchdown drive on Dallas' second possession. Cooks and Tolbert combined for 82 yards on 7 catches. The rest of the team combined caught 9 passes for 66 yards. Again, there was not much McCarthy could do with Rush struggling, so we're hard-pressed to come down too hard on him. Overall, McCarthy has done a nice job keeping the offense functioning without Prescott. He curled into a shell on Sunday, though, and frustrated Turpin in the process. While a player of Lamb's caliber is supposed to make McCarthy's job easier, play callers really show their chops when the cards are stacked against them. Turpin's quote does not mean the locker room suddenly isn't behind McCarthy. Prescott himself said after Sunday's loss that he's going to lobby for McCarthy to keep his job. Regardless, Turpin's comments are a reminder of McCarthy's frustrating tendencies as a play caller. Things go haywire. Let me know your thoughts on the Cowboys' performance against the Eagles in the comments section below. And now, on to our next topic. The Cowboys can now interview an intriguing Mike McCarthy replacement, but they should. McCarthy is better, plain and simple. In case you had any doubts, yes, Jerry Jones is prepared to take this thing down to the wire. Just 1 game left in the regular season, the Cowboys still have not renewed the contract of head coach Mike McCarthy. The Cowboys got steamrolled by the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday, but that loss shouldn't determine McCarthy's fate by any means. Thanks to injuries, the Dallas team that took the field was not close to the one fans envisioned when the season started. If anything, the loss was a bigger indictment on the front office than McCarthy. It showed the major gulf in talent between the Cowboys and Eagles. While Dallas has more than half of its payroll on injured reserve, even at full strength, they would fall short on paper relative to Philly. Of course, this regime doesn't have the self-reflection capability to concede that. It's unfortunate that they continue to dangle McCarthy's future to the media until they make a decision. Talk of whom could replace the 61-year-old will remain prevalent. Former Titans head coach Mike Vrabel has been a popular name in that regard, and he is officially on the market. Vrabel's consulting agreement with the Browns expired on Monday, according to Adam Schefter. That means Vrabel can now interview for head coaching jobs. The Saints and Jets are currently the only teams with openings, but that list will grow in bunches. While Vrabel does not have any interviews lined up as of this episode, that will change in short order. ESPN insiders Jeremy Fowler have both linked Vrabel with the Cowboys should they move on from McCarthy. While Vrabel is an intriguing option, Dallas would be better off sticking with McCarthy than bringing in the former coach of the year. Not only does McCarthy have a superior coaching resume, but he's an offensive-minded head coach. That's not to say Dallas has a scheme advantage every Sunday, far from it. But Dak Prescott, the most expensive quarterback in the NFL, is comfortable in McCarthy's system and has lobbied for McCarthy to keep his job. If the Cowboys hire Vrabel, he would presumably bring in his own offensive coordinator. Maybe the Joneses conduct their own search. Either option doesn't inspire much confidence. For all the Vrabel truthers out there, get a load of this. He flaunted a 43-27 as Titans head coach with Arthur Smith as his offensive coordinator. After Smith left to become the Falcons head coach, Vrabel stumbled to the tune of a 13-21 record. It's difficult to trust him to make the right hire, and even harder to entrust the Joneses with that decision. While his teams have a history of playing up to their competition, being among the most physical and disciplined in football, he would not be an upgrade over McCarthy. If the Cowboys do part ways with McCarthy, they should look at Lions' offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, Bucks' offensive coordinator Liam Cohen, Ravens' offensive coordinator Todd Monken, and even Vikings' defensive coordinator Brian Flores before they give Mike Vrabel a call. And on to our next topic. Micah Parsons, brutally honest about the Cowboys' future, their demoralizing loss, and he's not wrong. Even without Jalen Hurts, the Eagles' offense did whatever it wanted against the Cowboys. While Micah Parsons and the defense didn't put forth their best performance, Cooper Rusher put them behind the 8-ball early with a telegraphed pick six. It didn't help that Andrew Booth had a woeful game at cornerback, rushing the offense completely stalled out after a promising second drive. The game, for all intents and purposes, was over at halftime. We don't put too much stock into the 41-7 loss, but it says a lot that Eagles have reaped the benefits of being aggressive in the offseason. Saquon Barkley is on the verge of breaking the single-season record, while C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who they signed to a 3-year, $33 million contract, hauled in 2 interceptions, including the aforementioned pick six that set the tone. Parsons was asked after the loss about dethroning Eagles in 2025, as well as the hurdle in general the Cowboys will have to overcome with the NFC East as a whole, and gave a sobering response. First and foremost, Parsons said the Cowboys have to get healthy. The All-Pro mentioned that multiple starters won't be back until the middle of next season. Marvin Overshawn and Trayvon Diggs headline that list. Parsons says the team has to plan for that, whether that means spending more in free agency or re-signing important depth pieces. Sounds like the 24-year-old superstar doesn't want the front office to sit on its hands. And that's when Parsons took a deep dive into the division. Saying, quote, "As far as our division, it's going to be tough. I look at Jaden Daniels as a franchise quarterback. I'm going to be facing him for the next 8 to 10 years of my life. Hurts is a franchise guy. So every team pretty much has a franchise guy that I'm going to get used to. Giants might go ahead and get a franchise guy." Parsons is not wrong about the NFC East. The Eagles obviously aren't going anywhere, though their salary cap in 2025 and 26, it forced them into some tough decisions. The Commanders, meanwhile, clinched a playoff berth with their overtime win over the Falcons on Sunday night. They've won 11 games and counting in Dan Quinn's first year as a head coach. While Quinn has enforced a strong culture in Washington, rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels is already a star. Daniels ranks 6th with 69.4% completion rate to go with 3,500 passing yards and 25 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. He's 4th in the NFL with a 72.3 QBR. He's an exceptional pocket passer, but his mobility makes him more dangerous. He has over 800 rushing yards, averaging out to 54 yards per game with 6 touchdowns to boot. We're not even going to give the Giants the time of day. There is nothing wrong with what Parsons said. Getting healthy is obviously the most important thing for Dallas, The team's passive approach to the 2024 season is not going to work if it wants to get back on top of the NFC East. The Eagles and Commanders are going to be a problem for a long, long time. Let me know your thoughts on the NFC East as a whole in the comment section below. Do you think the Cowboys have a chance to take over the NFC East anytime in the future? Let me know. Of course, give us a thumbs up if you like our video. Hit that subscribe button down below. The bell notification button to be notified of future videos. And of course, if you want to support the channel, you can buy us a copy at buymeacoffee.com/thebigd. As always, your support helps the channel grow, upgrade our equipment, bring in new hosts, pay them, and eventually take this show on the road. As always, your support can help make that happen. And if you want to hear the audio version of this show, you can find us on all major podcast platforms, including Good Pods and Spotify. As always, thank you so much for watching and listening. We will see you next time.